Hello and welcome to your program, Hyperlink. This is where we all get together and answer your questions on a variety of teenage topics that affect both you and your parents. Today's episode is answering questions from your parents, so if they are around, ask them to join you. We left you in our previous episode talking about teen crushes. Today, however, we will discuss together the issue of teen peer pressure. Let's see what the youth and their parents think about teen peer pressure.
Honestly, teenagers get into peer pressure because of their surroundings. If we've always been surrounded by good personalities, good actions, right people, we wouldn't give into wrong peer pressure. But because of schools, private or public, you're always surrounded by someone or something that's not going to help you, and that's why some teenagers fall into peer pressure.
Thank you for your participations and your personal opinions. Peer pressure. It's more than just a phase that young people go through. Whether it leads to pink hair or body piercing, peer pressure is a powerful reality and many adults do not realize its effects. It can be a negative force in the lives of children and adolescents, often resulting in their experimentation with tobacco, alcohol, and illegal drugs. Parents often believe that their children do not value their opinions. In reality, studies suggest that parents have tremendous influence over their children, especially teenagers. No matter the age of their children, parents and caregivers should never feel helpless about countering the negative effects of peer pressure. Now let's go and answer the first question.
Why do teenagers give in to peer pressure?
Teens, like adults, are influenced by their peer group. This is normal behavior and is modeled for them by the adults around them almost every minute of every day. We all conform to the social standards set by our peer groups and our teenagers see it. That said, teens will tend to follow their peers in behaviors that are not considered appropriate or where they will leave their common sense behind. Part of the reason is the newly found importance of friendships, as teens are just getting used to their friends having any say in what they do. Then there is the everyone is doing it factor that can make a teen feel compelled to comply. Wrap that all up with the normal curiosity that often leads to the risk-taking behaviors of teenagers, and you have a credible reason why teens give into peer pressure. Let's move on to our next question.
Should we as Christians resist peer pressure as we do temptation?
Peer pressure means that friends put pressure on you to do something you may not want to do. They may urge you to cheat, steal, or say something to someone that makes you feel uncomfortable. That is negative peer pressure. But there is a positive peer pressure as well. Your friends may talk you into going to church to help them hand out spiritual articles or food for needy people, or perhaps go to a church camp. This is positive peer pressure and can do a lot of good. The problem with negative peer pressure is always this. If you give in to your friends, your peers, you may feel guilty or even get into trouble. But you are afraid that if you refuse to give in, you will lose your friendship or respect. What do you do? Let's move on to the next question.
Is it easier for a Christian to resist peer pressure?
Satan doesn't pressure unbelievers like he does Christians because unbelievers pose no threat to him. But Satan will try to get a Christian to turn to drugs, alcohol, pornography, and so on. The Bible says, resist the devil and he will flee from you. So Christians can resist him. But if you give in to him, you will lose your closeness to God and not have the desire to be as useful to him. But Christians have a greater sense of right and wrong than many non-Christians do. So their values sometimes allow them to say no quickly to anything that is dishonest or wrong. As a Christian, you always have the strongest person on your side. God is always the majority. When you take a stand for what's right, you are taking a stand for God. And God's side is always the winning side. In this sense, Christians do have it easier because God promises never to abandon us. Now let's move on to the next question.
What should I do when my teenager is being influenced by negative peer pressure?
When teens get involved in risk-taking behaviors such as drug use, absence, or other problem behaviors with a group of friends, you have a negative peer pressure issue. Parents are then faced with a dilemma. How do you handle the problem behavior and the negative peer pressure at the same time? While it isn't an easy parenting task, you are capable of handling these issues together. There are some tips that will help. The first one is talk to your teen. State clearly that you do not have a problem with their friends as people. You understand that your teen's friends can make mistakes, just like your teen made a mistake. But you do have a problem with the risk-taking behavior, and there needs to be a change on your teen's part and on their friends' part in order for you to be comfortable with them hanging out again. Another point is open up the lines of communication with the other parents. Let them in on what is going on so that there is no miscommunication happening. Keep in mind that everyone has their own perspective, so there is no need to argue any points on who may have done what. Simply let them know that you are an involved parent and you wish to be informed if your teen is mixed up in any more harmful behavior. A third point is build an action plan with your teen. Address changing the behaviors that are concerning you in the plan and allow your teen to come up with different options to these behaviors. Learn more about the problem behavior and use your discipline skills as necessary. Limit your teen's unsupervised time with the friends that were involved until you feel comfortable to slowly give back more of these privileges. You will need to be more involved with your teen at the same time and offer more supervised activities with their friends. Take caution. Don't allow your teen to place all of the blame at their friends' feet. This is an easy way out and maybe the way to even bigger problems for your teenager down the road. Even if your teen's friend was 90% accountable for the misbehavior, you still need to hold your teen accountable so that he or she can actively deal with the problem and move on. Part of learning how to make the right choices is learning how to deal with mistakes. Let's move on to our next question.
Does the Bible mention anything about peer pressure?
Negative peer pressure is just another name for temptation. The Bible gives some wonderful examples of people who resisted temptation. The key Bible verse to memorize is James 4:7, which says to submit yourself to God, for if you resist the devil, he will flee from you. Keep in mind that even Jesus Christ was tempted, but not successfully, by Satan, by the Jewish leaders, and also by Peter, his faithful disciple. Job the prophet withstood enormous temptations to give into Satan. He resisted and did right simply because it was right. Jesus made several comments about resisting temptation. At the Last Supper, he said, "The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak." So we are to watch and pray that we do not fall into temptation. Part of the Lord's Prayer says, "Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil." In 2 Peter 2:9, we read that the Lord knows how to rescue the godly from temptation. And in 1 Corinthians 10:13 tells us that God is faithful and will not allow temptation beyond what we can resist. God can deliver us from temptation and negative peer pressure if we pray for it. But we should pray that temptation does not arise. If it does, say no quickly and get away from the difficulty. Even if the results from doing right don't seem promising, they will turn out for the best at the end. You have God's word on it. Let's move on to our next question.
How can I prepare my youth for peer pressure?
The following are 5 points to help your teen prepare for peer pressure. 1. Teach young people how to refuse offers for cigarettes, alcohol, and drugs. Making children comfortable with what they can say goes a long way. For instance, shy children and adolescents might be more comfortable saying, "No, thanks," or "I have to go," while those who are more outgoing might say something like, "Forget it," or "No way." No matter what approach parents choose, it is important for them to role-play peer pressure situations with their children. A second point is talk to your young people about how to avoid undesirable situations or people who break the rules. Children and adolescents who are not in situations where they feel pressure to do negative actions are far less likely to do them. Likewise, those who choose friends who do not smoke, drink, use drugs, steal, and lie to their parents are far less likely to do these things as well. A third point is remind children that there is strength in numbers. When young people can anticipate stressful peer pressure situations, it might be helpful if they bring friends for support. Another point is let young people know that it is okay to seek an adult's advice. While it would be ideal if children sought the advice of their parents, other trusted adults can usually help them avoid most difficult situations, such as offers to smoke, drink, or use drugs. Another point is nurture strong self-esteem. Strong self-esteem helps children and adolescents make decisions and follow them, even if their friends do not think some choices are cool. Some ways parents can do this include being generous with praise, teaching children how to perceive themselves in positive ways, and avoiding criticism of children that takes the form of ridicule or shame. Let's go on to our next question.
What are the ways we can help make our teenagers be accepted in a peer group?
In high school, if you are not part of the in crowd, you are basically out and unpopular. Unfortunately, to become popular in one of the in peer groups, our teens need to act in ways that are not ways that would normally choose to act just to fit in. Teens can get caught up in this cycle of peer acceptance and unacceptable behaviors. Our job as parents is threefold. We need to show our teens how to be confident with whom they are, being true to themselves, and therefore have genuine friendships and not need to be accepted by those who would lead them down the wrong path. Here are some tips that will help with these goals. First of all, help build their confidence. Find your teen's role. There are so many different activities, hobbies, etc. Explore them all with your teenager, and I can promise you that they will find something they like and excel at. When they do, they will find other friends who like it also. Another point is, encourage your teenager not to belong to the popular crowd. Many times teens that belong to this crowd become overly stressed. They become so involved with what others want from them that they never explore what genuine friendship is all about. Another point to consider is, don't get caught up in the discipline battles. If your teen and their friends do something wrong, even if it is a serious issue, you will need to apply the auto, rewind, repeat discipline. Teenagers learn by making choices, so they need to have the situations to be able to make their choices. If your teen gets into trouble with friend, they will learn if you take the privilege away of seeing that friend for 1 week and then being allowed to make the same choices again. If you take the privilege of seeing that friend away forever, there will be nothing for them to learn from. Another point is, make it known to your teen that appearances are important. Outward appearance in teenagers is often a reflection of inner feelings. Encourage your teen to practice good hygiene and walk and talk with self-confidence. Another point is, don't nitpick their social life to death. Now this is a thin line. Yes, going out with friends is a privilege, and one that should be taken away at times when your teenager does not live up to his responsibilities at home or at school. But you need to remember that learning social skills can only happen in a social setting. It is very important that they learn these skills before they head off on their own. Therefore, try different forms of discipline instead of always taking social events away. Another point is, try not to make your teen feel bad about who they are. If they are left out of a certain group that you would like to see them be involved in, remember that it may be their choice not to be involved with that group, and it is their choice to make. Allow them to be true to who they are. Give them constructive choices. Show them what they can become involved in, and let them make the choice. Okay, well, now it's time for our story. Peer pressure. For many teenagers, the thought of high school is both exhilarating and nerve-wracking. The first weeks are filled with new classes and teachers, new friends and experiences. The excitement of a fresh year is often quickly replaced by the struggle to fit in and be accepted. In the beginning of my freshman year, my innocence to the ways of high school showed through in all my thoughts and actions. I had never experienced the typical girl drama, and up until that year, boys had always been more my friends than anything else. I had grown up in a Christian home and had a fairly strong relationship with God. My friends and family were the core of my life, and I never expected that to change. However, it did when I met Amanda. Amanda was the type of girl almost everybody liked. She was bouncy, cute, and funny, and she knew how to get people to want to be around her. Yet underneath Amanda's seemingly attractive personality, there was a whole other side that most people didn't see. From the beginning of the school year, I was drawn to Amanda. I appreciated her friendship and did everything I could to keep us in agreement. But after about a month, I began to question some of the things she did and said. I often heard her make rude comments about people in our classes or in the halls. She even said things about kids she didn't even know, including some upperclassmen. After hearing some of the things she said about others, I realized that I would do what it took to keep her from viewing me like that. Consequently, I ended up being almost a shadow of her. I abandoned my childhood friends for her simply because in her eyes they weren't good enough. I lost all contact with God because my focus was always on my friendship with Amanda. My true friends never wanted to be around me anymore, and I was constantly in conflict with my family. Gone was my little girl innocence. I had become someone I couldn't even relate to. Letting Amanda have so much of an influence over me slowly began to wear away at who I really was, creating a person I never wanted to know or be. Eventually, even Amanda abandoned me. We had a single argument, and the foundation that our friendship was on crumbled. I became the target of her slurs and quickly found myself alone and without a single friend to depend on. I expected that everyone had given up on me, even God. But God has a way of drawing a broken soul back to Him. It took me a while to figure out that the person I had become was not who God intended me to be. I realized that in all of my confusion, God had always been there, patiently waiting for me to come back to Him. I remember going to bed one night and just praying for mercy and forgiveness. I apologized for turning away from Him, along with my friends and family. I confessed how much I needed God's guidance in my life to get me through the day. A year later, I am still regretting some of my lost friendships, but mostly I regret losing my friendship with God during that time in my life. While I am on the mend, I know that I still have a way to go. But now I am headed in the right direction with real friends, real family, and single, real God to guide me along the way. Never lose faith in the one God who can always count on, for He's never lost faith in you. So this ends our episode for today on teen peer pressure. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and we are looking forward to meet you in our next episode, where we will discuss the issue on teen tolerance. So meet us next week, and don't forget to tell your friends to join you. God bless you and stay safe.